Good morning. I'm Kim McClary, President and CEO of the Los Angeles World Affairs Council and Town Hall. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you are all staying safe through these challenging times. I'm very pleased to introduce today's program featuring Consul General Silvia Chiave of Italy and Jessica Juganzik, our Vice President of Events, who will be moderating the program. They will be discussing what Italy's early outbreak can teach the world. Now it's my turn to turn this over to Consul General Chiave and Jessica. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kim, and apologies that we don't have Sul here with us today, but I am honored to be speaking with you, Consul General Chiave. I think all of us have been watching what's been transpiring in Italy, from the singing on the balconies to also what's been happening, the devastation of the people of Italy. So we are honored to get to hear from you directly. So my first question is, in this COVID-19 environment, there are daily developments and updates. If you can share with us the latest news from Italy, one of the first European countries hit hard by COVID-19, and are you seeing a flattening of the curve for active cases?
Thank you. First of all, I wish to thank such a prestigious forum as the LA World Affairs and Town Hall for giving me the opportunity to talk. And I also want to thank all the friends that are connected with us. This is, of course, an unprecedented crisis, a global crisis that we're living all together. And I think all sharing of experience is paramount. So the situation in Italy, we have today 147,000 cases, more than 30,000 people that have recovered, 98,000 active cases, and unfortunately we have 18,849 casualties. So we have started seeing encouraging signals early this week, meaning that the curve has started flattening, but not on a linear path, meaning that the decline of our curves has not been so steep. We stabilized on a so-called plateau that with a declining trend, of course, but with going up and down. Just to give you an example, we have today 3,900 more cases, but on the 9th of April yesterday we had 4,200, and the day before 3,800, and the day before 3,000. So it goes a little bit up and down. And unfortunately, the deaths are still around 600. Today, 570 new deaths. Yesterday, 600 new deaths. The day before, 500. So it's still a long way to go. What is important is that there has been a turning point on the 4th of April. For the first time, the number of patients in intensive care has declined for the first time, and it has been declining ever since. So we can say that the pressure on our hospitals, so badly hit by the crisis, is starting to decrease, and that's a very important thing. And another target we reached on the 4th of April was to bring the reproductive number to 1. The reproductive number is the average number of people that each infected person infects. So it was up to 3 at the very early stages of the crisis, but it is now our goal is to bring it below 1, because when this reproductive number is below 1 is when the epidemics disappear completely. So it is all encouraging. It is very encouraging. It means that the measures that we took with such a courage since the beginning of the crisis are working. The lockdown is working, but it also means that we still have to keep the guard up, not to let the guard down, because it will still be a long way. And yesterday, our Prime Minister announced that he will the lockdown measures and the restrictive measures will be extended probably until the first days of May. So this phase 2, we're trying to start talking about the phase 2, but it is still early to sing victory and to think we can go back to normal life. So that's the situation in Italy.
Well, there's some encouragement there. There's some optimism.
Yes.
You know, it's been noted that seniors have been identified as an at-risk group for COVID-19. And Italy, next to Japan, has the second oldest populations of citizens older than 60 years in the world. With the cases Italy has experienced, what can you tell us about the demographic effect of COVID?
Well, you know, this is true. You're perfectly right. We have an old population, one of the oldest in the world. The average age of people that died from this epidemic was 78, so very high. And 61% of people hospitalized had 3 or more pre-existing conditions, which means that, of course, if you have pre-existing condition, it is much more likely that you are an old person. Now, you know, it's really sad because this is vulnerable categories. In Italy, there's sometimes a broad sense of the family, people living all together, and so from a demographic point of view, I'm not an expert. I don't know if more than 18,000 casualties that will increase, unfortunately, have an effect. But we are saying in Italy, many people are saying we are losing the last part of a generation that still had a lot to teach us. So that is very unfortunate. But and Lombardia, which is the region most hit by the epidemic in Italy, is also the oldest region in Italy because there are like more than 2,200,000 people over the age of 65. So that's another data.
Yeah. You know, the length of Italy would be comparable to a drive from Northern California to San Diego. So to contain the spread of COVID-19, the Italian Council of Ministers deployed a zone approach, red zone, yellow zone, to identify critical areas, including quarantines and instructions on citizen movement. Can you tell us a little bit more about this strategy and how it's working?
You know, in fact, the zone strategy was adopted only for a very short time, because the Italian government realized and the regions realized that the virus doesn't know any border. So even though, you know, it's for everybody the same until it doesn't really hit you, not personally, but the area you're living, you don't think it can. But we soon realized that it was spreading nationwide. And so the 8th of March, more than 16 million people were quarantined with the closure of the northern part of Italy. But then we saw that the effects were not, it could mean that people would fled these regions to go elsewhere. So the day after, with a very prompt and I would say courageous decree, our government decided to close the entire Italy. So the zone strategy in reality lasted only 1 day. What we did was really acting fast. I mean, we are talking of a framework of Western countries that did not expect the pandemic and that were not prepared for the pandemic. But in that framework, Italy acted fast, because 10 days after 100 cases were reached, it was already we already took very restrictive measures. What we did was acting at the best of our knowledge with the model that was then used everywhere in the world, which is not the first best scenario to quarantine the entire world, but it's the only thing that is working presently in the situation where we are. It was validated by the WHO and by economists as well. We did put public health first. That's the main thing. You know, public health is the most, we discovered that public health, and I think the entire world is finding this out, is the most precious and important asset we have. So we put public health first. It is paramount, and measures were strict, adaptive to the situation. All our measures were taken based on scientific evidence. And another very important point was that we implemented decisions in full transparency and giving information to the public since the very first day and sharing information with the international community. Because this is not we say, it is not just a threat to public health, it is a threat to the health of our democracies. And being forced to make decisions, sometimes overcoming normal decision-making processes, means that to be accountable as a government and to gain trust from our people, we have to be full transparent. And that's what my government did from the first time.
Yeah, it's now been about 3 months since the global community has been dealing with COVID-19. With the World Health Organization and other data gathering institutions, is there any collective intelligence that you think can benefit California and other countries or regions that are facing these kind of impending peaks that are coming up?
You know, I think there's already a lot of international cooperation in the field of scientific cooperation, meaning that science and research doesn't know boundaries. And there's a lot of, we found out, you know, we're trying to find out what are the already ongoing collaboration. And there's a lot of Italian American scientists that work with Italian scientists that work in the United States. So this intelligence is already working all together. Mm-hmm. Of course, for the governments to work together, it's for politics, it's more difficult. But I think that this is the first real global crisis that we're witnessing. I mean, all challenges in the centers have been global, like, you know, terrorism, climate change, but none have been so symmetrical as this one. There are no winners and losers. Well, all the world is fighting against a war against one single invisible enemy. So that's why cooperation of democracies is crucial, and that we can all learn from each other. I think California, as far as I've seen, has been very courageous in taking measures, restrictive measures, very fast. That were immediately applied to the whole state in a very courageous way, because it's not an easy decision to make, to, you know, stop an economy in favor of public health. But I hope that our experience led also to this very wise path that California and Los Angeles have taken. The lockdown, the shelter in place, or safer at home measures we're taking at the very beginning with few cases. And I really hope that our experience in Italy has led to that as well.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think seeing those examples, and because we have social media and all these means to see what was happening in Italy, definitely inspired people here to take it more seriously. I'm going to just ask you one final question, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience. So if you guys want to send those in, my colleague Claire is going to join us in a moment to ask those questions. The need for humanitarian aid, you know, supplies, equipment, other resources, is unprecedented right now. I know Angelenos, Los Angeles, is home to the largest population of Italian Americans in California, and the others in the audience wish to hear about ways they can help their home country as well. So are there any examples of how other countries have or are supporting Italy and each other? And if there's any way that people in the audience could maybe help as well?
Well, you know, we have had so many demonstrations of friendship, solidarity at all levels from the United States that really testify how deep rooted is our friendship and how solid it is. Because in the times of crisis, you can really see who is a friend and who is not a friend. Right. At all levels, meaning that yesterday, the First Lady, American First Lady, called our First Lady to show solidarity. And it is even more important in a moment where the United States are badly hit by the crisis. And so these manifestations is even more important. You might know that President Trump announced $100 million worth donations to Italy in the sanitary field. We're working to render it real. And American corporates with the American Chamber of Commerce just donated almost $30 million to Italian health system. So this is very important, but it's not only that. All levels means that we receive a lot of emails from our American friends stating our friendship, solidarity, that we are there with them, and we're all together, and we're friends, and that's very, and we appreciate that a lot, and we will never forget that. Of course, a lot still have to be made. We still need a lot of material, and with the Italian embassy in Washington, D.C., together with the Italian Scholars and Scientists Association in America, we launched a fundraising initiative, Italy Stays Strong, hashtag Italy Stays Strong. It is an initiative that will benefit 3 Italian hospitals in Italy, one in the northern part, Sacco di Milano, one in the center, Spallanzani di Roma, and one in the southern part, Cotugno of Naples. And these 3 hospitals are heavily involved also in research against the coronavirus. So it's not only, it's of course your solidarity doesn't, the great generosity and solidarity of Americans and Californians doesn't know borders or doesn't want to return, but never, like in this case, generosity can benefit the entire world, because of course all the research that is being made in Italy is immediately rendered disposed to the entire world, and we also hope that our experience will help. This is in the short term, so I hope that you will help us with this fundraising. But there is something very important in the long period that I would ask all our friends that listen to do, and it is to renew our friendship, to start again. I mean, if you had planned to visit Italy, please do visit Italy when the crisis will be over. Please continue doing business with Italy. Resume all connections and all relations, not only because it is important for our bilateral relation, but also because we think that in this phase, after this phase, to recover, we will really have to make it together, keeping open flows of people, flows of investment, flows of trade, and reinforcing multilateral system and international organization. So that's an effort that I am asking to everybody that is listening, and not only, of course, in the longer term. We don't know when that will happen, but we really think that we have to make it together.
Yeah. Well, that's a deal. I will make sure to visit Italy when this is over. I think we're all eager to get to go back outside and connect with our international friends around the world. So at this point, I am going to open it up to my colleague Claire, who is going to start taking questions from you. We'll try to get to as many as we can. So Claire, do you want to join us?
Hi, thank you. Thank you both for this really enlightening conversation. Our first question is, politically and economically, how do you see this crisis will impact our societies in the future? And how will the international relations evolve between Italy and the US?
So, of course, the effects on the world economy, on the European Union economy, are not clear. There are optimistic views and pessimistic views. What is sure is that we will have our economy will contract if we, as we say, if we restart opening something in June in the Eurozone. I mean, in the European Union that has the Eurozone, there will be a reduction, let's say 9, 10, 11%, which is huge. Now we see a drop of 50% of activity stop. So it will cost a lot, and not only the risk is that of the economy that will have to restart, but also of course social unrest and there's a great risk that this crisis will deepen inequalities everywhere in the world. So of course everybody is worried about it, but as I said, it is paramount that international relations are strengthened after this, that the solidarity, cohesion, cooperation of peoples, of friends of democracies are strengthened after this. And I'm already sure that with the United States, it's evident. Italy not rediscovered because we know it, but we really saw a strengthening of our bonds and how deep they are. So I'm sure that there will be no issues with the US, and that you will really help us, and not only I must repeat to keep the bilateral relation really strong, but also to keep all open. Now we are in a phases of crisis management. It is obvious that everybody's like closing borders, but after that we will have to be more open than ever to restart, because this is a common battle and we have to make it together.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how do the demographics of infection and deaths in Italy compare to those in other European countries?
So, as we said, unfortunately, Italy has a vulnerable population of elderly that was particularly touched by these epidemics. The average age of deaths is 78, some say 80, also hospitalized people. So, but you might have seen that there's also, so the demographic is of course, but I think everywhere in the world where there are an older population, the population is touched. But the high mortality and lethality rate in Italy might not be only due to that, to this demographic data, because most probably what all scientists are saying, it is probably a fact that many more people were infected and maybe asymptomatic than what we thought. I believe that an assessment can be made only at the end of the crisis, because even now it depends upon how you calculate number of casualties per number of closed cases or open cases. It changes a little bit. So we'll have to end this, but we're already studying, even thinking about phase 2 in Italy. There's a strong study on how to start not looking for herd immunity, because for that numbers would have to be higher, but really to find out how many with antibody tests that we're studying, how many people really were infected. And I think at the end of the crisis, all these figures will be clearer. For now, it is only like speculation. What is sure is that the vulnerable categories are more hit by this virus. That's for everybody.
Thank you. Next is, how is Italy communicating COVID information or data with neighboring areas such as African countries?
Well, you know, we have we in the crisis management phase. Of course, everybody communicates more with his or its own population, because that's where all the measures are directed. So now we're trying to understand, even other European Union countries are trying to understand how to cope with the with communications coming from other neighboring countries that might need our help. We kept all the lines open of, you know, there was a kind of a polemic in Italy because some said that we were donating money and materials to some Northern African countries, but that were a donation that were given upon an agreement that had 2 or 3 years, so nothing is suspended. Our cooperation with our neighbors in the framework of bilateral relation or on European Union relations with these neighboring countries is going like normal. And we hope that the crisis doesn't hit Africa badly. We see figures changing every day. We don't know how accountable some countries are in giving figures and in giving the reality of what is happening. We are trying, as I said, to be more transparent and to share our information with all our friends and our partners internationally. And we have done that since the very first day.
Thank you. Do you think international efforts on climate change will strengthen after we've seen this positive global effect the crisis brought to our planet?
Oh, yeah, that's a nice question. I really hope so. That's really you know, I think one of the biggest lessons that we can draw from this crisis is how not only public health is the main asset we have, and then strengthening our health systems will means strengthening our national security, but also we were not prepared, and now we know how vulnerable we are. You know, the European Union didn't fight wars within or outside of its borders since the Second World War. So now we're looking, so we had this tendency to look at the bad of what happened to humanity from outside, the suffering, all the bad, and even, you know, with these global challenges, I think vulnerability that now we know characterizes everybody with no boundaries will probably, I hope, help us thinking that also what we can and cannot do with the mother nature, because this is a fight between us and the virus, which is you know, a biological thing. So I also suppose that some awareness on other challenges might raise from this crisis, and I hope it will.
Yes, me too. How is Italy preparing for the second wave of infections, or is Italy's main focus on the dangers it is facing at this current moment?
So we started when the curve was started flattening. We're starting thinking about phase 2, because you know, in this framework there are everybody, not everywhere, not only in Italy, different forces. There are health people that want to keep the lockdown, which is also are also sustained and supported by economists that say, okay, it's better to keep the lockdown for some more time. Businesses, shops, managers that want to open, and governments that have to find a balance. So being already in advance and compared to other countries and having flattened the curve, we are thinking about phase 2. We don't know if a second wave will come in autumn. It's all you know, scientists suppose that it could come, but we don't know. What we're doing is thinking about phase 2 like with a reorganized system to cope with possible new waves of the epidemic, like this immunity license with this antibody test that we're trying to test to find out who, not only who had the virus and recovered, but also who was asymptomatic and never tested. So we will have figures and also people that will be immune to restart. So we will also follow more closely people with symptoms and not symptoms at home, make these antibodies, test with antibodies, promote for phase 2 a wider use of protective gear. That is also what is coming elsewhere. Also here in Los Angeles, I'm seeing that masks are wider widely used, and that will be important for people that will go back to work. We will have a hospital specialized in COVID-19, and we're also trying to work on an app that would allow us to track and trace people, but that will be, of course, only on a voluntary basis. But that could help us also having a better framework. So let's hope that we can enter into phase 2 soon. It's still early. Most of the restrictive measures will be kept until the beginning of May. Now, after Easter, some minor activities might open again, productive activities most of all. But there's still a long way to do, and we hope that we will arrive in next autumn ready for an eventual second wave that we still hope will not appear.
Great, thank you. Next question is, there is an ongoing debate in the US whether the federal government should take control of the coronavirus response or leave it to the individual states. Is a similar debate taking place in Europe? Should the EU take a stronger hand or continue to leave matters to the individual countries?
Well, from a sanitary health point of view, this is not only a debate that is happening in the European Union, but also in Italy. We're a centralized state, not a federal state, but still at the beginning of the crisis, the regions dealt with it in different ways, only because nobody expected to be hit so widely and so badly. So Lombardia and Veneto, for example, two neighboring regions, reacted in different ways. Now, when, of course, the spread was nationwide, the government took the lead, but it was regions that asked the government to take the lead. In the European Union, of course, it's still less federal. It's less federal than it's not a federal state, and so everybody just looked. The crisis management is national. But now, what is really at stake, and it is really important for our identity, is that the European Union has to be present for the recovery of the whole European Union. I mean, this is the first non-asymmetric crisis. There's no countries hit more than others, and the European Union will not, cannot allow an eventual bailout of countries with austerity after the crisis is over. Now, some steps forward have been made. The European Union yesterday, there's been a first step at the Eurogroup. The Eurogroup is the meeting of finance ministers of the Eurozone that reached an agreement, at least on the opportunity to establish new mechanisms and new instruments. A new fiscal policy that will not put debts together, but give new instruments. And they agreed on the first 500 billion euros that will be rendered available in the fund, in addition to what the European institutions already did, because they scrapped fiscal rules to allow us to spend more, and that's how, in the framework of which Italy could already take bilateral, national measures. The European Central Bank is doing its part, but now the news yesterday is that governments agree that we have to do more altogether. This is very important for the future of the European Union, and that was a very important day. Although the agreement is not, we have to work on it, but it was a very important first step. I mean, no country can make it alone in the European Union, and I think no country can make it alone in the entire world. But in the European Union, what we can do alone is not enough. It's not enough for us. It is not enough for Germany, for the Netherlands, for France, for Spain. So a strong European Union is today paramount.
Great. This person said, thanks for your presentation, and I hope you as well as your staff are doing well. Could you talk a bit more about Italy sees the advantages and challenges of its foreign and trade policy from the EU to China? especially in planning for future economic recovery as the crisis hopefully recedes?
So, Italy is a very open country. We do a lot of trade, always did a lot of trade, a lot of international relation, and the fact to be so open, mostly even more in the northern part of Italy, the industrial part of Italy, and as a touristic destination from everywhere, might have been a reason why the virus was so spread. But that's in all other moments of our life, that's a great advantage. And we are friends with a lot of countries in the world. We have special partnerships. I can't say if the recovery will see geopolitical shifts, but not from the Italian point of view, at least. We have good relations with everybody. We have had a lot of help from most countries in the world, and we're grateful for that because it means that we gave in the past and we received back. But our strong partnerships stay the same, and in the long period, of course, we'll have to increase all of these knots with the multilateral knots in order to restart and to benefit all. That would benefit all. It is really important that nobody closes borders to investments, to trade, to financial flows, and that those open again in all parts of the world, maintaining what are the really bonds that already link parts of the world.
This question is, have US purchases of PPEs on the world market impinged on the accessibility of these supplies in Italy?
Not as far as I know. We had some issues at the beginning of the crisis with the masks that were stopped from a border to another. So something that was internal to us, but I'm not aware of any blockage from the United States buying. As I was saying, President Trump is helping us with $100 million donation in health materials, and American corporates also with 30 million. So I would say that I think that this amount of money and this great generosity will translate in a lot of masks for our health personnel. So we're very grateful about that.
The next person is wondering, how is Venice doing? Before COVID, Venice was dealing with the flooding of treasures such as the St. Mark's Cathedral. They want to update.
Yes, well, the northern part of Italy was hit badly, but Veneto less than others. I think it was, strategies at the beginning of a crisis like that. Crisis management strategies cannot be judged really because we're all facing a new threat. But Veneto is not doing so bad. Of course, Venice was already badly hit by the flows. But that was more of a tragedy for our cultural heritage and our arts and cultural heritage than from a population's point of view. Now, from a population's point of view, being in the northern part, it's doing comparatively well compared to Lombardia. However, the problem is that Venice is a city that's which economy is also a lot based on tourism, because it's one of the most visited spots in the world, I might say. And so I think that it could be a city badly hit from a touristic point of view because of all the structures that hotels and the touristic structures and restaurants. We don't know how much they will still be closed. So the economic impact on cities like Venice could be really bad and can be assessed only in some time and at the end of this crisis. But of course, some sectors of the economy will be more hit than others, and touristic sector is one of those.
Thank you. This will be our final question. We see the news of Italians singing from their balconies to keep their spirits up. How is your extended Italian family doing, and what are they doing to get through this?
Well, I have a family in Italy. My two parents are in Rome, but all the rest of my family are living in the very epicenter of the crisis, which is near Milano, exactly where the crisis started. They're all doing well. Thank you for asking. They were very prudent and careful since the very beginning. They're starting to be kind of tired, these people that my family back in Lombardia has been closed since 6 weeks. We've been closed only a couple of weeks, and it already seems ages. And I think we will be able also to assess the social and psychological impact of this crisis. But not only my family, but the entire Italian population, I think, showed a resilience, a cohesion, and a courage that we would not expect from ourselves. We always say that crises highlight maybe the worst of people. So we thought that it could be handled in a different way, but we immediately saw the unity in our population, also shown by songs and the national anthem sung from the windows that really surprised us and made us think that we're proud of how we are reacting, proud of being Italian, proud of what is happening, and really hoping that all these can be used by others to perform better than us in terms of contagions and deaths, and then we will be all together for the after crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Chiave. I think on behalf of all of us at the Council and everyone that is joining us today, we just continue for the, hope for the continued healing in Italy, and that we'll continue to see those numbers continue to flatten. So thank you so much. We're going to turn it over to Kim to close us out. So thank you.
Consul General Chiave, we are so appreciative of your time, and I'm so glad that your family is doing well. And Jessica, thank you so much for moderating today. For all of our audience, our viewing audience, we would very much appreciate your feedback on today's program, as well as your ideas for new programs on the survey that immediately follows this program. We have a terrific lineup next week that we'd love you to all tune into. On Tuesday, our young professionals will host a live stream on telemedicine and the pivot to alternative healthcare access. On Wednesday, please join us for a discussion with the Consul General of the UAE in our continued partnership with the LA World Trade Center. We will be discussing this response in the Middle East around coronavirus, as well as the disruptions to the energy and the oil sector. And next Thursday, we'll kick off a weekly live stream with our politics professor, Dan Schnur, focusing on politics beyond the pandemic, while COVID-19 is so pervasive in our news. Please visit our website at lawac.org to find out how you can support our programming and sign up for future programs. Please stay safe, stay informed, and see you soon. Thank you so much.